right, we got another podcast. I guess if you want to go ahead and introduce. Well, actually, how do you pronounce your YouTube name?
Hello, everyone. This is PunkDisorder. I will be shortening that to Punk so we do not have to get our tongues tied every couple of seconds.
So recently, Punk released a Dark Souls video that's outstanding. I wanted to watch it a couple more times before the podcast, but unfortunately, I got distracted with Ragnarok. But this video he made really connected with me and how I like to process my thoughts on those series in general. And do you want to go ahead and explain your ambitions for your YouTube channel and maybe a little bit of information from that video?
Yeah, absolutely. We'll start small scale first and then go up to just the YouTube channel in general.
Okay.
Yeah, that Dark Souls video was kind of a funny story. That was easily the most stuck I have ever gotten in making a video. I was like, oh gosh, what do I write about? The Souls community is known for like eating people alive kind of sometimes, and I didn't want to like put wrong things or anything that like was going to be too contentious, but I also wanted to really say my genuine thoughts. And so I was like, oh, what do I include, what do I not include? And so by the end of it, I was like, this is just going to be another flop video, huh? It's as a small YouTuber, that's kind of one of those thoughts in the back of your mind that some of your videos just aren't going to get grabbed by the algorithm and just
Mm-hmm.
not going to do great. But I was like, you know what? Perfection is the enemy of good, and I've made a good video. It's not going to be perfect. Pushed it out, and it exploded. As far as a small YouTuber with only 300 subs, 17,000 views is nothing to scoff at for a video. At least that's where it stands at the
Wow.
time of recording. And I keep seeing subs rolling in. The comments have been overwhelmingly amazing and inspiring. Everybody has been super supportive. And yeah, and so really kind of to bring that out into a wider scope of why that video got made, along with my whole channel, is this whole Punk Disorder channel is was kind of made as a bit of a pushback against the sentiment around gaming right now. One thing that I've noticed, and I'm sure a lot of people have noticed, is with the millennial generations especially, a lot of us grew up on video games, and a lot of millennials, I've been seeing the question float around, are video games even fun anymore? Is there anything to like about them, or I'm feeling much more like I'm wasting my time playing games than actually getting enjoyment out of it. And that's one of those sentiments that I thought about for the longest time, because it's like, man, do I enjoy games? And kind of doing my own self-reflection, and every time I would talk to people, people in my life or whatnot, they'd be like, man, you really like video games. Have you ever thought about like writing for a game journalism magazine or something like that? And I was like, nah, I'm not good enough to talk about that or do that and whatnot. And but I kept on feeling like there needs to be some voices of positivity around games, because the sentiment around games is so overwhelmingly negative. I'm not sure if I'm the only one, but there was just the slew in the past month of nothing but negative Overwatch 2 videos. And while absolutely there are things to be criticized there, I've been having a blast with the game, and I think that there really is a place for people to remember that we can talk positive things about games. Yeah, there's kind of crappy companies out there. The industry can do some real shady stuff, but at the end of the day, there's still a lot of joy and fun and happiness and connection that we can make with other people and to ourselves and our own personality through video games. And I think that's kind of what I wanted to go through in the channel. And that's why I started the Why I Still Play series, is because a lot of the games that I still play are like 5+ years old. Dark Souls, Skyrim, Maple Story, all these games that I have featured so far, and plan to feature in the future. They're all relatively old games, quote unquote, but there's some charm or some magic that keeps bringing me back to them. And I just wanted a place that I could kind of explore that and discuss usually a broad overarching topic about the game, and then focus in on a more narrow discussion specifically pertaining to that game. So like the Dark Souls video, going back to that, was called Dark Souls and the Perfection of Narrative and Gameplay, or the perfection of gameplay narrative. And it started with a good 2 minutes of talking about how video games are the ultimate entertainment medium and really the ultimate form of art for telling a story that the player has to feel the most viscerally. When a game is sad, it doesn't need to scream, "You are now sad." uh, it's it can show you. It knows when it's just had a sad moment. There's a difference between reading a book about how somebody had to pull the trigger to kill their best friend and having to do it in a game. There really is a difference in how you interact with those sorts of things. And so that was kind of how the Dark Souls video shaped up. Was a lot of games are really good at weaving their gameplay and narrative together, as we've all heard the buzzword ludo narrative. But I think Dark Souls was the number one game to do that because of how obscured and how toned down and almost non-existent the storytelling is, at least the explicit storytelling. It gives you like a 5-minute blurb at the beginning, yelling a bunch of proper nouns at you and saying, ah yes, Anito, Lord of Death, and Gwyn, the Lord of Sunlight, and you're like, okay, what does all this mean? And then Dark Souls lets you figure out the story through gameplay, through items, through just environmental features. And I think that is such a great way to kind of point out and prove, see, this is how video games can be art. They can tell stories without words, and that's what a lot of art does. I have been rambling.
That was beautiful. Well stated. Oh man, I probably go through several versions of that every morning with myself. So it's definitely very nice talking to someone that can definitely share that perspective. And so you're throwing a bit of the ambitions you want from your YouTube channel, just basically expressing how you feel about other games as well.
Yeah, the thing that got me to really start this, yeah, about other games as well, yeah. The thing that really got me to start this is because I always kind of had a problem with the motivation,
Mm-hmm.
where I would always be like, oh, do I really want to, I can't really do a YouTube video. I don't have enough time. I always made excuses to myself. Oh, I
Yeah.
don't have enough time. I don't have this. Nobody's interested in what I have to say. 17,000 views later. None of the, I'm not significant enough. There's no way that this is gonna go anywhere. And then I told myself, well, then what if you don't do it for everybody else? What if you just make this for you? I was like, what do you mean? And I just kind of convinced myself, what if you treat this in some way, like make it significant to you, and then let other people find it? That's what it is. It is I was like, okay, I'll treat it like an online diary, almost a journal. I am just as much explaining why I play these games to other people as I am explaining to myself. Because growing older, I'm in my late 20s, and I don't know how much longer I have with either time to be invested in video games, or just, you know, physical dexterity. Life is short, anything can happen. I want there to be something of a memoir, I guess, of how passionate I was for this form of art, because you know not all the time do we not always do we get the time to really record our thoughts and feelings on the things that brought us the most joy and gave us the most happiness in life. And I think that that's what I wanted to do for myself for video games. Was I want to remind myself and anybody else that might want to listen why video games were so revolutionary, at least in my life. I don't know how much they've changed or influenced other people's lives, but this is what, games have done in my life, and I want other people to experience that. And so if people listen, cool. If it was me talking to the sky for, hours and hours, I would be cool with that too, because that is where I wanted that, that is what I am focused on, and that is the mindset I'm going to grip onto from 10 to 100 to 1,000 to however many subscribers, show up. I am still writing videos to explain to myself why I am so passionate about this form of art.
Awesome, awesome. That's I swear I could probably listen to you talk about that for hours.
I'm invested, man. Video
Ah,
games are fun.
yeah, man, I've had several dry spells, and especially with the From Software games existing, I mean, I can always go back to them and play. I remember, see, I started with Castlevania, and after Curse of Darkness, after I pretty much played so much out of Curse of Darkness, done just about everything, I just couldn't get the Death's Pulse. Um, it was 2000, maybe 6 or 7. I mean, I don't think my memory's a little bit blurry. But nothing else was coming out because the Castlevania games didn't really go in the direction that I wanted. I didn't care for Lords of Shadow. I tried it multiple
Mhm.
times, and I just can't. I just can't stand the gameplay. It's trying to be something that is not like it's trying to be God of War, and
Mhm.
it personally didn't work for me. So I just kind of abandoned it. And I was kind of hoping they would eventually go back to the old formula, at least with the 3D, at least with the PS2 games. I mean, they've kind of done the 2D style.
Mhm.
However, I want more of the Lament of Innocence or Curse of Darkness style, and I just don't think they're ever going to do it again. I mean, I don't even know if they're ever going to upgrade them for a current generation. I
Mhm.
just don't think the fan base is there. I know that the fan base is very passionate. I just don't think it's big enough. But they may prove me wrong. Konami may just release a collection just for the 3D games, which I would love to see. Castlevania 64, Legacy of Darkness, and then Lament of Innocence and Curse of Darkness, which would be fantastic. I would love to play those games.
Mhm.
And
I don't know, man. I'm a Yu-Gi-Oh player, and Konami listening to the base, I wouldn't hold your breath.
yeah, the Silent Hill thing was yeah. I'm kind of going off.
GT, Silent Hills, Hideo Kojima, all of that. Yeah, and I don't know, man.
Yeah, I don't know. I'll see how it turns out. The Japanese one aesthetically looked fine, but it was a cinematic trailer. I was really hoping for gameplay. I kind of get ticked off when it's just cinematics. Um, but going back, I saw Demon Souls in Game Informer magazine. It was a satire, and so ever since I was introduced to Demon Souls, my passion for gaming really sparked up. I was like, okay, well this is nice, but I thought Demon Souls was just going to be the only one, and I didn't expect Dark Souls, and then from there it's just kind of history. And there,
Mhm.
there are several aspects in gaming that I really look forward to. You got the whole skill based kind of the From Software games that I enjoy, where I can challenge myself in a very fair way, where I can just keep pushing myself. Um, and then you got the kind of the more creative side, like Little Big Planet, Super Mario Maker 2.
Mhm.
Games like that are not out often, unfortunately.
Mhm.
And then probably other ones I would have to think about that are currently not. I mean, well, horror games. There's not a whole lot of really good horror games. Resident Evil 7 came out, and that's actually one of my favorite games of all time, and that was extremely well established in my opinion.
And
Um, but
fun fact about me, I'm a bit weird. I cannot do horror anything. I am way too on edge as a person that intentionally trying to scare myself is probably the worst thing I could
oh,
do.
really?
Fun fact about me. Yeah, I don't really play horror games. I have like an outsider looking in sort of view on horror. I get why people appreciate it, and I'm like, man, I wish I could appreciate it the way other people do, but I physically cannot. I am so jumpy, I am so jittery that it just becomes a however many hours of an anxiety attack because I'm like, something is coming for me. I am going to die in real life when this thing gets me.
Oh my goodness.
So, yeah, horror games are weird to me.
Yeah, definitely don't play it on VR.
Yeah, no, yeah, that sounds like legitimate torture. I do not like the sound of that.
it makes me motion sick. I get really bad motion sickness playing in VR.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
So let's go ahead and get into those questions before we go off off topic again.
Oh no,
My
no, no! That's
bad.
the only place we go. We only go to Narnia with our conversations here.
Oh yes, yes. All right. So let's go ahead and start with our top five favorite games of all time. Let's go from least favorite to favorite.
So my top 5 games of all time, starting from the number 5 going up to number 1. Number 5, Dishonored, and that's really
Ooh,
like a lot of these are going to be emblematic of like a whole series or franchise. So when I say a name, lump everything in that you think of when you think that.
gotcha.
Dishonored. I absolutely love Dishonored. I played it right when it came out in 2012, and it is the game that got me to really kind of think of a lot of games in this different light. Did you want me to list them all off, or did you just want me to like say one, talk about it, say one, talk about? How did you want me to do
Yeah, if you
that?
don't mind just saying one, then we'll both kind of go back and forth until we feel like we're finished.
Alrighty, perfect. So yeah, so Dishonored was kind of my introduction to this style of game that I never really knew, and I know that there's a bunch of things of like you could call like stealth action adventure RPGs or you know action or I guess action games with stealth elements. You know, there's a million ways you can word it, but I actually have a video on my channel that is kind of my own personal word I came up for a lot of these games, and I call them mechanical sandboxes because when you think of sandbox games, they're usually games where they slap you in the middle of a big world and they say, here's a bunch of stuff, do what you want. That's what, you know, the whole idea of a sandbox, that's what it was named after. You know, a kid gets dropped into a sandbox with some shovels and pails, go to town, build a sandcastle, dig yourself a hole, do what you want. Um, and mechanical sandboxes was this thing. I really only made it up like months ago because I was like, I want to call this something because I want to make a video about these, but I don't know what to call them. And it's games that use their mechanics in a similar way as a sandbox. Like instead of putting you a big world, say go have fun, they'll put a bunch of enemies, hand you a bunch of toys, and say kill them how you'd like. But make it it can be as simple and crude or as amazingly fascinatingly interesting to watch. And that is kind of what Dishonored started for me. And so games that I lumped into this would be things like the Far Cry games. You know, I still am able to find fun in the Far Cry games. I know a lot of people don't love the series, and I get that. It hasn't done a lot of innovation lately, but the whole ability to like chain things, or you throw a knife up in the air, run over, stab one person, shoot another person, the knife lands in someone else's head, like, all the kinds of crazy combos of stuff you can do. And like another sort of term that I came up for these games, like Dishonored, Far Cry, is PvE playmaking games. Because a lot of games, they kind of promote either passive play or a very rigid, strict play style, which isn't a bad thing. Games that have a very firm defined, you know firmly defined play style to them, totally good, and that has helped a lot of games. But there's something about this whole like playmaking idea in games where it says, here's a bunch of tools, you can play this situation as sloppily or as clean as you'd like. We're just curious what you'll think. There's no penalty for doing it. There's not much penalty for doing it poorly. You're just going to look amazing if you do it really cool. And that's what I think those PvE playmakers are. And I think Dishonored was my first game that really helped me to experience that. Where, have you ever played Dishonored?
I have it. I have tried it. I don't think I was patient enough with it. I really probably
Mm.
should try it again.
There's a. Do you do recommendations for other channels on this channel before I say anything?
Oh, yeah, go ahead if you want to.
Give a watch to a YouTuber called Stealth Gamer BR. Watch his playthroughs of Dishonored, and you'll go, "Oh, that's how you're supposed to play it."
Oh, okay.
He does these insane chains of using abilities on like just the craziest ways where he'll start running and then he'll fire a bolt randomly up in the air. You're like, why did he do that? And then he'll start up a fight. He'll teleport behind someone, or like, oh, well, not behind, but like up in the air, drop down, stab them, then turn around with the gun, fire at somebody else. Then somebody else runs up to him. He blocks their attack, and then he stands there. Like, okay, why is he just standing there? And then the bolt he fired earlier will hit them in the head. You're like, what? How did what?
Huh? So the
What?
the game keeps up with the rendering of the bullet, so it can fall back down.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Everything, nothing de-renders. And
Wow.
so a lot of the things you can do are, it opens up a lot of different, like I say, plays you can make. So instead of just running up and, giving 3 backstabs, okay, cool, I guess, you can instead do all of this crazy stuff. Like, you can stop time, fire a bunch of crossbow bolts at a group of enemies, and then when you de-stop time, all of them get hit at once. And it's like, oh, okay, that's cool. But then, as you're chaining more and more things together, it looks, cooler and cooler. And there's like a huge skill ceiling gap where, yeah, you can play it as simply as possible and you can probably pass the game perfectly fine. But if you want to look like the coolest, the coolest of the cool, and really like get that feeling of, oh, I am a supernatural ninja assassin. Oh, all I had to do was teleport 7 times, completely bamboozle them, and then kill 5 people with only one swing of my sword. Of course.
Hmm.
So, yeah.
So, what does this game accomplish? What ingredient does it accomplish better than other games like it, like Deathloop and Thief? I think is another one.
What I think it accomplishes best is a bit of visceralness. And like, one of the things I like Deathloop, I got about halfway through it or so, but which is always funny to think of a game that constantly repeats from the start. But Deathloop it felt a little bit slower. Like, everything felt a little more deliberate, which isn't a bad thing. But a lot of like the kill animations were just like that little bit too long, or they just didn't have like that feeling of flow to them. And Thief, I think, was also, I think if I remember my time that I played Thief, it was relatively a lot slower and a bit more emphasized stealth. Dishonored said, yeah, you can stealth your way. You can go through the entire game without killing anybody. I've done I think it's called a shadow playthrough, where you don't kill a single person, you don't touch anything, you do all the non-lethal assassinations, and that's how you beat the game, is not a single person even knew you were there. But the Dishonored, what it does is it has so much more of kind of like a curve to what you're able to do with it, and everything is so much punchier and so much more impactful but quick. Like the stabs, they're all very, this is going to make me sound like a psychopath. The stabbing is very well animated.
Wow.
Where you'll grab somebody and then you'll just like kind of tilt their head to the side, stick the sword in their neck, and then drop the body. It's really quick, really visceral, super quick. In Deathloop, I remember you'd like wrap your hands around their head and then like do one twist and then another one to like snap their neck. And instead of like that crunchierness, this sounds so horrible. The more I talk, please do not get me sectioned. But in Deathloop, it's a lot crunchier and like, oh yeah, like a one snap and then finally snap the neck. But in Dishonored, it's so slick and clean. Like, there's one animation that's really, really solid, where you'll grab their head and just kind of do a really quick little slide across the throat, but it's really, really smooth. I know this sounds horrible, but I promise it's about gameplay.
Okay, so Dishonored doesn't have a specific way you can apply as much creativity as you want to get through it.
There is a much higher ceiling. I guess there's obviously, eventually you're going to hit the walls or the limits of what the game can allow you to do.
Mm-hmm.
But there is so much more of a range, where instead of I'd say, like, let's say Deathloop, you can do crazy cool stuff from like 20 to 120, on the coolness scale. Dishonored, you can do stuff from like 1 to 1,000. It's
Nice. Okay.
ridiculous, some of the things that I've seen. And so, yeah, Deathloop didn't quite grab that for me. It was still a cool game. I still liked a lot of other stuff about it, but Dishonored really is where I will always come back to. The powers are so unique, they're so creative, and the way they flow into the rest of the gameplay is just top notch for me.
So Dishonored 2 didn't really meet your expectation?
That's going back to my first comment. Dishonored 2 and Death of the Outsider kind of fall into one thing, but Dishonored is, I think, my favorite of all of the three.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you've sparked something in me to go try it out again sometime.
Oh, I assure you, like, give a few watches to some like really, really, extremely skilled players of Dishonored, and you will be so inspired to want to even begin to replicate 1% of what they're doing. Yeah, I promise you, you'll love it.
Nice. Okay. Well, let's. Yeah, I feel like we could talk on this for another 30 minutes, but we probably should move on to number four.
So number four, after talking about slitting throats and stabbing necks for 10 minutes, is Super Mario Odyssey.
Ooh.
um, yes.
One I've actually played and finished.
Yes. Super Mario Odyssey was kind of that same idea of mechanical sandboxing, but taken into a completely different genre and context with platforming. And I absolutely adored the as I would call it, it was a brain tickler. Every time you were looking at things, instead of just thinking, okay, this is what the game wants me to do, it's like, but what does the game not want me to do, but kind of does want me to do? If you get what I'm saying there?
Yeah. Yep.
Like the very first one that I don't know if you're probably thinking of is in the desert world, like the desert world that's frozen over. There's a 2D Mario section that you can go into a pipe, run through, and then come out up on top, yada yada, make progress and level. Or you can double or triple jump in front of the wall, kick off the wall, throw your hat, jump off your hat, and then get to the top, and then just keep running, completely skipping over the 2D Mario section.
Okay.
Or there's, I think, also in the same world, there's a maze where you have to possess a bullet bill, and you have to be able to maneuver it just between these really narrow turns and pathways in this maze. And it can be kind of difficult, and it's a little weird. Or you can look and you're like, wait a minute, is this maze, does it have a roof? And you can jump out of your bullet bill, wall kick back and forth, and then end up on top of the maze and just run across the top. And there's a bunch of coins up there, almost as a nod from the developer to say, oh no, we thought of this. As kind of a nod to let you know, yeah, you think you're creative, and you are creative. Here's a little reward, but we also did think of you doing this.
That game handles craziness so well. I mean, you can possess a T-Rex, for goodness sake, and it just works for some reason. It's so random and it works. I mean,
yeah, I'm a really big fan of kind of like I'm a fan of bigness. That's a fun sentence there. But I'm a fan of games that have a lot going on and feel like they're able to handle it all, even okay. If it's not great, even if it handles it all relatively well. I'll talk about this more with my number one. But Super Mario Odyssey definitely did that, where it felt like the sand world and the food and like the snack foods world and the city world all felt like part of the same game, even though like visually they could have been from Mars and another dimension for all you know. But because of how every level felt like it played with the same mechanics and contributed to the same mechanical suite you've been developing with Mario for hours and hours, they all felt like part of the same cohesive game. You're like, yeah, no, I get this all makes sense in the same context, even though the art style is crazy different and the layout's weird and the theming is way different. It all still feels cohesive, and I love cohesive chaos, I guess, which is funny for somebody whose channel name is about disorder.
um, yeah, the level design is absolutely outstanding. I enjoyed every moment of Odyssey except for the. I hate the jump roping one. I think my attention span just sucks. So
Oh my
that
gosh.
jump rope thing, I'm like, man, yeah, you can have it.
Did you do the 100 jump one that you had to get one of the moons?
No, my attention span wouldn't let me do it.
That
I started daydreaming before
that
I.
was a soul sucker for me. I did it.
Oh, you
I
did?
did not. I will not say I enjoyed it, but I did it.
Yeah, that's just the thing. I think maybe I got the 50 jumps, and then I started thinking about Star Wars or something, and I would mess up. I just.
You know, I had a really great run of that game where my wife and I she would just kind of look up so after I beat the game the first time, she would then go on, we'd go from world to world, she'd look up where the moons are, and because I had the mechanical execution, she would just look up the knowledge and say, okay, so do this, jump off this, go here, do this, and that's how you get this one. I'm like, okay, so some of them are easy and some of them were just absolutely insane. And then yeah, the jump rope one, the volleyball one, those two, whew. That's one thing I just kind of appreciate about all Mario games. So like once again, when I'm saying Odyssey is my favorite of the group, but I really do enjoy the 3D Mario games.
Mm-hmm.
um the the whole thing with like what they do with their level design and how they just how they intrigue you and how they have such a great skill curve where yeah, it really does feel like a 10-year-old, a 5-year-old, however many year old could beat these games. But while you're a young adult or even an older adult, seeing how much further the game lets you push with your skill and how much it will still reward skill from the lowest end to the highest end is just such a cool thing in game design. I love games that are able to fit a skill curve inside of them. um that just tickles me pink every time I see it.
You should definitely play Frogun. It is an underrated gem released this year. Um, it's in a
Frogun.
PlayStation 1 style, and some of the best level design I've seen in a long time. I mean, each level has its own personality, its own set of challenges, and I'm still playing it. I technically beat the final boss, but the game just keeps going, and
Hmm.
it's only priced I think like $30, but the game is massive. There's so
Oh,
much.
I'm looking at it. Yeah, $15.
It was
For
$15. Okay.
Yeah, on Steam. Heck, I might pick that up today.
I've recommended it to so many people. My last guest, I recommended it. He has played it. He is instantly addicted to it. The game is as hard as you want it to be. You can go through it, not do anything, and have a really simple run. But if you want to collect everything, that's where the challenge comes in because it's similar to Crash Bandicoot. With no death runs, speed runs, and also what you mentioned before in Super Mario Odyssey, where you can actually cheat the level, but it's 100% intentional. The developer is very well aware of the design, and I couldn't recommend it more. It's the only game that's probably tied with Ragnarok right now. It's
Wow.
that good.
Yeah, I'm looking at the reviews. They're great. I mean, it's got frogs, it's got guns. What more could you ask for?
I mean, oh, I I'm definitely going to platinum that game. It is every time I
Is it
play it,
on
I'm sorry.
is it on PlayStation?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Oh yeah, my PS5 is in the shop right now, but I will possibly as I'm looking at it on Steam right now, so I might just get it on PC.
I probably mentioned it at least once in each podcast, probably because I just I wanted to get the word out about it. It's
It
just
looks fun. It
yes,
it
man.
looks like
Just
a cute art style. It looks interesting with the little frog grapple hook. I mean, I agree with this review. It does have frogs. It does have guns. I don't know what else I need in a video game.
I hope that the developer he responds so quickly. I can talk to him on Twitter. If you
Mhm.
have any questions, he'll answer them. I've gone to him about glitches and bugs in the game. I've seen some very weird bugs, and he's gone back and fixed them. Like one level, coins went. There was one level where a coin wouldn't register. That's fixed. There was one level where if I collected too many coins, the bounce pad wouldn't register high enough. That's fixed now. Um, Before the big patch, you had to collect every coin and stop at a checkpoint. By the way, the checkpoints kind of work like the bonfires in the From Software games.
Hmm.
Um, but before the patch, you collect coins, stop at the checkpoint, you get to keep those coins. However, if you collect a coin and you fall, you had to collect those coins again. After the patch, he made it to where you can collect a coin, fall, and you get to keep the coins. Which I was concerned about at first, but it does remove a lot of tediousness. But other than
Hmm.
that, still a fantastic game. One of the best platformers I have ever played.
That's why I think one of those really, really difficult kind of pieces of balancing for a lot of games is where do you balance where when is something becoming difficult in like healthy challenge and difficulty,
Hmm.
and when are you just adding needless boredom and tedium to your game? That's, I think, like the most delicate balancing act that you can do in video games, and anybody that pulls it off has my respect.
Yeah, unfortunately, a lot of games suffer with their hardest difficulties where they just bloat out
Mhm.
enemies and it's just an enemy sponge, or basically just endurance. You're just doing the same thing but for longer. God of War was
Mhm.
bad about that, and it's still bad about that. The Witcher 3
I
was bad about that, and most games are really bad about it. And games like The Last of Us has a really good highest difficulty. One of my favorite highest difficulties because they remove mechanics and you got to think outside the box to get past encounters, and I just absolutely
Mhm.
adore it. I haven't played The Last of Us Part 2 on grounded mode yet, kind of saving it for later. But there are games out there that do handle highest difficulties very well. Just do mainly, I think I just like it when they remove mechanics where you got to think outside the box. Basically, I think that's where I'm kind of at. I'm at.
Yeah, I so that's actually one of those things. I know it's a bit off topic from what we're on here,
Yes.
but I really, really love, cranking up game difficulty to the max most of the time.
Hmm.
Because so Skyrim, I hate it. If you've ever have you ever played Legendary difficulty Skyrim?
No, I never really cared for the game enough for it.
It makes me want to stick toothpicks under my toes and kick walls.
Mm,
That is
very spongy, huh?
legendary difficulty Skyrim. I have in one of my videos. I was like, oh yeah, you know what? Let's give an idea. So I turned it up to legendary. I got myself in full ebony armor, which is like the second highest gear set. Made sure I was perked out and everything with just vanilla perks, and I put down one singular bandit chief that's like the highest level they scale up to, which is I think 35, not too high. And I was level 35. Okay, so we're evenly matched. I have way better gear. I spent 5 minutes killing one bandit.
Really?
This is not okay. This
Wow.
is not how game difficulty is supposed to work, guys. It was not difficult. It was pretty much hit him a few times. He hits me twice, gets me down really low. I pop a healing spell that heals me back to full. This went on for several minutes. That was the
Jeez.
entire fight. Um, yeah, it's like through my I think it was on my Ordinator video. I made a video about a perk mod called Ordinator, and it's about how this mod is really, really good at making the highest difficulties way less tedious, where you're actually investing like skill into your character and you're learning how to play your character depending on what you pick, instead of just, oh, these perks make me do the same thing better. These perks make me do different things to gain different benefits. And it revolutionizes how you approach Skyrim, and I love that.
See,
Um,
oh, sorry.
Oh, I was gonna say, if I was allowed to, I would absolutely have, instead of putting a game in one of these points, I would have put Ordinator Perk Mod as one of my favorite games of all time, because it is a different game than Skyrim. We'll talk about it more when I talk about Skyrim, which is on my top five.
Ah, interesting. Okay. Um, so what I like to do here recently, I've been trying to organically adjust difficulty in the games, where it's just pretty much just personal challenges, which is what I do
Mm.
in the From Software games. So I'm like, well, why can't I just do it for other games? So I jumped to a game like Grand Theft Auto 5, and
Mhm.
they have challenges in the game. The little get the gold sort of 100% in the missions where you have specific goals. I love stuff like that. I wish the From Software games would do that more with their trophies, especially with the Demon Souls upgrade that they had for the PS5, where they had
Mm.
boss specific trophies. And so I went to Grand Theft Auto 5. I'm like, okay, well, I want to get 100% gold on this mission. Maybe I can try doing it without using my gun, which I think is impossible. I don't think anyone's been able to beat Grand Theft Auto 5 without using a gun. I tried it with the first mission where where you actually get a gun, and I tried using my knife, and literally it's just there's really no way.
Misery.
I'm sorry.
Just misery all the way through.
Yeah, but I enjoyed Grand Theft Auto 5 more because I actually appreciated the level design and remembered it a lot more. Because I can remember it, to this day, and it's probably been months ago since I've done it. I'm like, man, I still remember that mission because I put more effort in organically making it difficult, which, I feel like is very important in video games where you need a well designed difficulty so you can
Mhm.
remember the video game, remember your experience instead of just kind of remember the cinematic feeling. You need that more in-depth
Mhm.
experience so a game can stick with you, and I think that's what a lot of games today are missing.
The personal connection
Yes.
to a game. There's actually, I don't know how you feel about them. Do you play Pokemon games?
No. I tried.
Um there is, when you're because you're talking about artificial challenges. Have you ever heard of the term Nuzlocke?
No.
Okay, so in for Pokemon games, there's a community made, fan made challenge called the Nuzlocke Run, where instead of, so most Pokemon games, you can catch whatever you want, go wherever you want, level as much you want, do whatever you want. You usually will just end up steamrolling the game because, they're supposed to have a curve where kids can enjoy them, adults can enjoy them,
Mm-hmm.
be super simple. But a lot of fans are like, okay, we want an actual hard Pokemon game. Well, how do we make Pokemon hard? So this is what people came up with. No items in battle. Okay, that's fine. So you can't use a potion on a Pokemon. If you want recovery, you're gonna have to teach the Pokemon a recovery move, eating up one of your move slots. Um, then you can only catch one Pokemon per route in the game. So route one, you can only catch one Pokemon. Once you've caught that one, that's the one that's going to be on your team. Doesn't matter if there's a better one out there. That's the one you're using. So you can't pick and choose all of the best statted ones. If you get a bunch of stinkers, you're using a bunch of stinkers. Good luck. And then you can't overlevel the gym. So every gym leader has a highest level, their quote unquote ace Pokemon. You can't overlevel that. Your whole team has to be at or below that level
Hmm.
before you take on the gym. If you have something over that level, you can't use it in the fight. So all of a sudden, okay, so that's getting more and more. And then the real parts of the Nuzlocke. If a Pokemon faints, cannot use it for the rest of the run. It is considered dead, quote unquote. You have to put it in the box or release it. Usually, people put it in the box because they want to keep a memory of that Pokemon. And so all of a sudden, you got a star player who's just sweeping through everything, and they get hit by an unlucky critical strike. They're dead. Congratulations.
Wow.
You now have to find a new star for your team, and every feint hurts when it happens. You're like, oh no. And because it didn't feel like it hurt enough, another optional rule that everybody kind of generally accepts is you have to nickname every one of your Pokemon so you feel more closely attached to them.
Huh.
So when they die, it hurts more. Yeah. And then lastly, the real kicker of the whole thing is if you ever wipe on a fight, you ever white out, which is what it's called in the games, where all your Pokemon get fainted and you lose the battle, you instantly lose the entire game. You have to reset from the beginning.
Wow.
It makes Pokemon games so much more fun and so much more intense, while also, if I'm being honest, it gets closer to the spirit of what Pokemon talks about, is supposed to be about in the anime. Instead of just, the games where they can be pretty mindless of just pick the super effective move and win, it really gets to the make a strategy, connect with your team, train together, win together, like really bond with your Pokemon because you don't know when your last battle with them is. And it leads to these really really epic moments where like there's some Nuzlockers online where they're doing a run, their entire team's been killed, their Pokemon lives on like 2 health and then kills the other Pokemon or faints the other Pokemon to win the entire run. And it's like you literally won that entire run with 2 HP. If that had happened, we'll snap back to the beginning. So yeah, it kind of it makes all of Pokemon's the randomness elements shine most, because you want to you want to play around the randomness. You have to really be like actively thinking of, okay, am I in a range for a crit? The famous term in that community, play around the critical strike. And yeah, it's just that is, I think, my favorite example of where a challenge run connects you with the themes the game is trying to communicate with you. You're no longer mindlessly just kind of traipsing through the game and yada yada, not paying attention, not really caring about what happens. Oh, my Pokemon fainted, I'll revive him. It's now every fight can be your last, and I think that makes for such a cool experience and a much better experience going through these Pokemon games that are usually really really easy. It connects you on a whole nother level to the game, and it kind of is more or less like made me fall back in love with playing Pokemon games, because they usually would just kind of, yeah, they're fun, they're all right. Now I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm doing a Nuzlocke run with Generation Lock from Generation 1 all the way up to 9, which is coming out next week, and it's a blast. So
That's awesome that that's actually a thing where people actually apply organic challenges to themselves. How do you spell that? What's it called?
the Nuzlocke, Nuzlocke. It's a weird name. If I remember correctly, the story behind it was the original the origin of the Nuzlocke challenge was this guy who made a comic series about the guy who created the idea of the challenge made a comic series of his playthrough in a Nuzlocke, where his team's like star member, or his ace, was a Nuzleaf, which is a Pokemon. And that Nuzleaf's nickname was John Locke, which from the Lost series, and so Nuzlocke, that's how the name happened.
Wow. So other than collecting different Pokemon, I thought it was pretty straightforward. I didn't know you could actually expand upon difficulty that way.
Oh yeah, it really really does take, and especially like in recent years when they've made the games naturally harder, like enemy teams are more strategically built. The most recent entries before Scarlet and Violet, which was a remake of the Generation 4 games, Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl, they pulled out all the stops. And they made the Elite Four teams like as competitively viable as they could. They gave them smart held items, smart EVs, smart IVs, which I know it's a lot of Pokemon mumbo jumbo, good coverage moves. These are all kind of slang terms, but all that is to say these teams are hard to beat on a normal playthrough. So playing with Nuzlocke rules, these things will eat your team for breakfast, and it's right at the end of the game, so you'll probably be playing that game for a long time.
Man, okay. Maybe I should try that. Maybe I'll end up falling in love with Pokemon playing that way.
I honestly think that it's a great way to find enjoyment in the games as an adult, because yeah, they can be pretty, I will admit, they can be a little boring, or at least very good don't pay attention to games, games you can watch Netflix while you play. But when you're Nuzlocking, you got to be people running calcs, making sure your damage is going to be enough to one shot, because if this thing gets one move off, your Pokemon's done. Like you have to be very very engaged with it, and I think that is so cool.
Which Pokemon do you recommend the most?
Ooh, that is a good question. I can send a link. You can probably put this link in the bottom of the video. There's a site called Nuzlocke University that explains rules and stuff, and it also has a bunch of articles about like which are some of the best Pokemon games. I actually wrote a script for a channel kind of related to this, and so if you ever, I can tell you about it when that comes out. I don't know when they're going to release it though, but I did write a script about the worst to best Pokemon games to Nuzlocke, and a lot of people recommend Fire Red and Leaf Green is one of them. They were Generation 3 games. They take place in the Kanto region, which is the Generation 1 region. They're simple enough to understand, but there was kind of when Pokemon was starting to get more complex. If you want a really hard game to start with, you can go with the Diamond, Pearl, Platinum, or of course, if you have a Switch, you can get Brilliant Diamond, Shining Pearl. Those are very difficult to Nuzlocke. Really, it kind of comes down to a lot of preference. There's a lot of good places to start. Personally, I only like playing the games Gen 4 and beyond, because that was when a lot of the modern quality of life features kind of came into play for Pokemon. And we got to see things like the physical special split, where there were physical moves and special moves, instead of each type was assigned if it was physical or special. So all fighting moves are physical, all water moves are special. They instead were like, okay, that's dumb, because if somebody were to punch you, to use something like a water punch, then that's pretty physical, a punch. And if some Pokemon used a fighting move like Aura Sphere, it's shooting like an energy beam, like a Kamehameha. That sounds pretty special to me. And
Wow.
so it kind of broke things down and really added the layer of depth and complexity to Pokemon to just make them better and more interesting. And yeah, I really highly recommend looking into Nuzlocking and Pokemon and just all that in general. Sometime I am absolutely making a video about why I still play Pokemon games.
Yeah, I definitely need to keep an eye out on something like that. See, when I'm at work, I'm by myself all day, and it gives me time to listen to a ton of videos. So stuff like that, I'll definitely need to look out for. How long do you think it might be?
I think I have it scheduled to come out sometime in December. I am trying to make sure that I don't completely overwork myself. I know this
Hmm.
month, you can look forward to a Why Still Play World of Warcraft. That's going to probably coincide with the release of Dragonflight. But then next month, I'm going to probably do a Why Still Play Pokemon. I wanted to do it for the release of Scarlet and Violet coming out next week, but I also didn't want to die. And so trying to crank out 3 videos in a month is generally not a good idea.
What's the
It,
Oh, sorry.
mhm. Oh, continue.
Oh, what's the estimated duration of the video?
Uh, I mean, I've been trying to be consistent with my video durations, but I'm not. And so for Why Still Play, I've been doing everything from 10 minutes and 42 seconds as my shortest,
42
and
seconds.
10 minutes and
Oh,
42 seconds
sorry.
for my shortest, and 19 minutes and 25 seconds is my longest for the Dark Souls video.
Okay.
So yeah.
Yeah, man, I think my longest boss review is the Godskin Duo one, because I talk
Ooh.
about every single Godskin fight. 'Cause I really want to express the reason why it's so long, because I want to express my full in-depth perspective on how I feel about them. Because the Godskin Duo it definitely broke me in Elden Ring, just because of how broken itself is.
I've
Um,
heard a lot of people really did not enjoy the Godskin duo.
and I'm very stubborn, so I didn't want to use sleeping pods. I used sleeping pods on my first playthrough. I felt terrible because I felt like I kind of copped out, out of my playstyle. And and so on my second character, I managed to do it. I took a while trying to kink out the RNG aspects, which are a lot. Um, and of course, the first fight in the review is the Godskin Duo. Then I have the Apostle, the Noble. The Noble ended up being my favorite boss. And then
Hmm.
I got the Godskin Duo in the Spirit Caller Cave. And so that stretched out to, I think, 11 minutes. And man, the amount of writing I had to do for that one was incredible.
Yeah, I've only heard a lot of like really, really negative things about the Godskin duo.
Hmm.
Um, and a lot of people were like, "What the hell from Soft?"
Yeah,
they
I know. It's one of my biggest disappointments. One of my biggest disappointment in the series, along with the Dragon God from Demon Souls.
The Dragon God, I guess it was kind of a cool thing to look at, but it wasn't really much. But yeah,
Yeah.
the Godskin duo, I heard it felt very much more like, Ornstein and Smo. They were cool because they had chemistry.
Mm-hmm.
The fast and the slow. Okay, so you got to always be looking out so Smo doesn't catch you from behind with his little hammer drag attack. But you also need to be keeping an eye on Ornstein so he doesn't do his little zippy dash around the arena and stab you with a spear.
Yeah.
And it made for a really cool dynamic, but they were also rarely attacking at the same time because Smo took 2 years to wind up an attack, and Ornstein took like half a second to wind up an attack. So you were never trying to dodge, like two things at the same time. But then the Godskin duo, the fat one is the faster one, and the skinny one is slower but still really fast.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like Ornstein and Super Ornstein instead of just fighting Ornstein.
But yeah, the fireballs was the most problematic about that design because you could be concentrating on one even though he's separated, and you also got to worry about a fireball that's out of out of the screen.
Dude, just be a Jedi. Use the Force.
I know.
Duh.
Sometimes I had to use cautionary rolling.
Mhm.
That started with Rom the Vacuous Spider with those little spiders. You kind of just had to sense when one's about to hit you, but it's still terrible.
I've done that so many times with my friends where like I play Vayne in League of Legends and she has a dodge roll. And there are so many times where there'll be a fight and then like a stealth enemy will use something, or like somebody will use a cross map ultimate that I had no way of seeing, but I'll suddenly just dodge out of the way. And they're like, how the hell did you see that? I was like, I don't know. I'm a Jedi, probably.
Yeah, I understand. Man. Well, let's go ahead and hear your number 3.
Number 3 is Dark Souls and really the Souls series as a whole.
Gotcha.
I love the Souls games. They are absolutely something else. They are like the main series of the Souls games. Just for reference, I'm including in this specific. I have not played Sekiro, so
Ooh.
I'm an awful person. I'm including Dark Souls 1, 2, 3. Yes, even 2. I know I'm a disgusting blight upon the world. Bloodborne, and what little I have played of Elden Ring because I am so far behind on games. That is what I am including in my Dark Souls. But Dark Souls 1 is my golden child for this entry.
Nice. Yeah, Dark Souls used to be my number 1 actually, but I'll get to that when I get to my list.
It's Froggun, isn't it?
Oh, you'll find out. But I would talk further about this one, but I feel like we're going to touch on Dark Souls so many times that we already have touched on Dark Souls for a while in this podcast alone. So, did you want to say anything else?
Dark Souls, good.
Dark Souls, good. All right, let's get your number 2.
My number 2 is The Elder Scrolls V Skyrim. I absolutely love Skyrim. It is a game that every single winter I have a Skyrim phase. So you know those games that you have phases with, like that 2 weeks every year that you just need to play Minecraft. You play Minecraft for like a week or two, and then you just don't touch it for a whole year. That is what Skyrim is for me. Except it's multiple times per year, and yeah, Skyrim is very, very much up there, and I am including all of base game Skyrim as well as mods. And I know that's kind of unfair, but if Skyrim wasn't such a good game in the first place, we wouldn't have this big of a modding scene for it. And so at this point, I consider mods as practically part of the Skyrim base game experience. Skyrim is so endlessly replayable. I have the map of Skyrim pretty much memorized. Like if you were to pull up a map of the map of Skyrim, I could name probably 95% of the locations, and I say that with utmost confidence.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So you had no conflict with Dark Souls?
What do you mean?
Well, I mean, Skyrim and Dark Souls came out the same year. You didn't have like any conflict of interest, or did you play those games totally separately from years?
Totally separately. I played Skyrim in early 2012, like a month after it, or 2 months after it came out. I played Dark Souls the first time in 2015 after my roommate told me.
Okay.
Yeah, I was way late to the Dark Souls party. I I had a roommate who was like, I mean, you saw my video. Roommate was just like, "Hey, you really like Skyrim?" I was like, "Yeah, I love medieval RPGs. You know, another medieval RPG you'll totally love." Um, this is a disclaimer, not a disclaimer, but a confession. My first playthrough of Dark Souls, I had to play with two mods. One to make the game playable because I only had a PC at the time. And did you ever play the Dark Souls Prepare to Die edition port for PC?
I believe I have it.
Uh, it was borderline unplayable.
Yeah, I had to
um,
download that mod for what was it called?
DS1 fix, I think,
Yeah,
is
yeah,
what it was called, or DS fix.
yeah, that's what I had to download in order to play it.
Yeah, I had to have that to even be able to play it, so I wouldn't consider that a mod. But then I had a second mod that had like sarcastic messages for every time I died, just so I could laugh instead of getting frustrated.
You know, I'm not the biggest fan of mods, but one mod that has me interested is one thing that I've always wanted in the From Software game, something that I wish that New Game Plus would at least offer as an option, and that's randomizing items. And I can only
Mm,
experience that on PC.
yeah. So yeah, we'll go with mods. Going back to Skyrim. So yeah, Skyrim. I loved the base game. I played it for hours and hours. I probably have like maybe a couple hundred hours on the base game, but I have thousands and thousands. I think I have like. Let me pull up my Steam here. Skyrim. So new Skyrim. Oh, the old Skyrim. I have 1,675 hours, with probably about 100 of hours of that being on base game. And then new Skyrim, I have 1,408 hours.
Wow.
So altogether, about 3,000 hours on Skyrim, with about 100 of those being in the base game. Skyrim was just such a great experience with adventures and that real feeling of being lost. One of the first games that I ever experienced where I felt like I was lost in real life, but blissfully lost.
Hmm.
Where you're just like, I don't know where I'm going, and I don't care. I'll find something cool to do. Skyrim was just so magical for yeah, a game with dragons and spells tends to be pretty magical, but like the experience of Skyrim for the first time, as I say in my video, I am afraid to answer what I would give to experience Skyrim for the first time because I don't know if I would like the answer to that question. It is a game that if I could have my mind wiped and I do not ever remember playing through it, I would fall in love with it right on over again because wow.
Yeah, I remember when let's see, I'm trying to remember. Okay, so Skyrim. I think I bought Dark Souls and Skyrim around the same time, and I believe I was playing them. I was swapping back and forth. I think I eventually finished Skyrim, and I went to GameStop and I went ahead and traded it in because I just I don't know. Dark Souls just won over so much more for me,
Mm-hmm.
and the GameStop employee was just totally shocked that I was trading in Skyrim, a game that just came out. And
What?
he was like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "Well, I got Dark Souls, and I just prefer that more." He's like, "Why?" I'm like, "I just find it a lot more satisfying. I just prefer its design a lot more." And he's like, "Dude, Skyrim's like the best game ever made. Why? I mean, I can't trade this in." I'm like, "Well, I do, and I am."
Yeah,
and
I see the games for their merits
mhm.
both ways. Dark Souls is wonderful, Skyrim is wonderful.
Yeah, oh yeah, yeah.
But
Um, I won't go into my dislikes about Skyrim. I'll just push that for another time. Uh, but I eventually bought Skyrim again. I bought like I think the upgrade for the PS4, and let's just say it just didn't really go that well. Still, maybe I need to go back and revisit and see if I can organically adjust the difficulty, and maybe I can enjoy it more.
Mhm.
Is Since you played Skyrim significantly more than I have, is there any kind of organic adjustments that would make the game interesting for me?
I think the quote unquote most organic adjustment you can do is artificial adjustment, and that is through mods.
Okay.
Um, which I then of course would recommend getting it on PC for. But yeah, Skyrim, I think, as far as challenge runs go, the most you're probably going to get is a speed run of Skyrim for challenging things you can do. But and I'm sure you could possibly come up with some things. I mean, playing on legendary difficulty, even though I bash it all the time, I still find myself enjoying the how much you have to kind of really engage with more of the mechanics of the game. You have to be like, oh, resistance potions are actually worth something now, because taking in like normal adept difficulty, taking a 25% frost resistance potion, okay, cool, 25% less of 10 damage is 2 damage. But then crank it up to legendary where that frost damage is now doing 30% 30 damage per second instead of 10 damage per second, and 25% of that for that's like 8 damage per second you're mitigating. Oh,
Hmm.
okay. And so yeah, resistances become a lot more valuable. I do still think legendary has its problems and whatnot, but ultimately, if you want to find a really good tailored experience to like really go, oh, this is what people this is what their people love Skyrim for, and you haven't been able to hit it off with the main game, I absolutely would recommend just slapping a mod list in there. There's a lot of mod lists that focus some on difficulty, some on completely overhauling the game. As I made the joke in my video, you can play Skyrim Souls Zero Dawn Sekiro Born if you want to,
Hmm.
and yeah, there's some games that just completely and utterly overhaul combat. My favorite mod of all time, the perk mod Ordinator, I think is enough to already make it so you can crank the game to like master, which is the second highest difficulty, and then play with Ordinator, and you will have a significantly better time because of how much more RPG Skyrim starts to feel like, where you're actually building a character instead of just, oh yeah, I grabbed the sword and I slapped a couple points into do more sword damage, and now I do more sword damage. Yay! Um, Playing with this Ordinator perk mod, it drastically changes how you approach the game. Either it's no more just flat upgrades and just, okay, you're gonna still swing a sword, you're just gonna do it harder, or you're gonna get minor bonuses for things you do with your sword. Your choice of weapon now matters. Axes are really good at causing burst damage, where they have a perk in Ordinator that makes it so that you attack when you attack something, you apply a bleed to it. Okay, so it's just a very small bleed. However, any damage you dealt during that bleed gets echoed by a percentage. So you normal attack them, apply the bleed, then slap on every last one of your power attacks, every poison, every big amount of damage you can do in that 15, I think it was 15, 20, 25% damage echoed, all of a sudden chunks their health bar, and you're like, oh,
Hmm.
that feels good. And so that's what axes do. Maces are the anti-armor item, where uh it doesn't matter if you're smacking a dragon or smacking someone in leather armor, you're gonna do the most consistent damage because you are reducing armor by ridiculous amounts. Like in the base game, it's like, oh, 10%, 20% armor reduction. With the mod, it's like 200, 400, 600 armor reduction, because armor stats are weird in Skyrim. But essentially, you're doing pretty much true damage with everything you do. So you will do um, the most consistent damage with a mace. And then a sword is the most defensive, where every time you hit somebody with it, it reduces their attack damage by like 10%. And as long as you're attacking them, it keeps them dealing less damage. I think it's like 10, 15, 20% or something like that. So they're kind of the duelist weapon. You want to apply the damage reduction to individual targets and then single them out and duel them with your advantage of dealing more damage to them, and then pick your next target, duel them down, pick your next target, duel them down. And so that makes it different. Playing a mage is completely, it's in a different galaxy relative to vanilla Skyrim. Vanilla Skyrim's mages are like, cool, I guess you can cast some spells. They have some slightly different effects, but nothing really earth-shattering. But then under Ordinator, all three of the schools of magic have a very unique identity where you feel, okay, this is, I wanted to play a pyromancer, and now the entire battlefield is on fire. That is what I wanted to be when I picked a pyromancer. I didn't just want to cast fire spells as well as I cast ice spells. I wanted to be able to set the battlefield entirely on fire and my enemies burn down to nothing but ash. Playing a frost mage is pretty much the CC powerhouse mage, where it's like, yeah, I don't do nearly as much damage as a pyromancer, but I'm also never going to take damage because melees cannot get close to me, because the amount of slows and paralysis and all of the crowd control you can spread as a cryomancer is just ridiculous. And then the electromancer playing as like a shock mage is sort of a balance between the two, where you'll get some crowd control, and you have a very ebb and flow play style where you'll get these buffs based on how many spell casts you've done that will give you a huge spike in damage, and then you drop back down, and then spike back up, and then drop back down, and spike back up. And so that's kind of how they all differentiate themselves, where you're really investing in learning how to play a specific type of mage differently. And I love it. I absolutely love it. I could legitimately rant at you about Ordinator probably for the next 5 hours, so I'm not going to do that to you.
Well, perhaps maybe my dislike for Skyrim is just the lack of information and the potential of Skyrim, because I tried it that a few years ago when I bought the upgrade for PS4, and I walked into a cave and I just did pitiful damage, and I just I was like, you know what, I'm not feeling it. I'm getting sleepy after 30 minutes. I think I just need to find that one thing in Skyrim that's going to motivate me to play and just keep playing. Because there's something that I feel like I'm doing something wrong where I'm just losing interest after 30 minutes.
Yeah, I honest to goodness think that if you couldn't find the base game interesting, especially since it sounds like you're a bit of a connoisseur of role-playing in just RPG elements in games, I absolutely think you will love the Ordinator perk mod. I can send you a link after this, just as a DM, just so you can look at it and read over all the perk trees, and you'll kind of realize, oh, this really brings out. And you can also watch the video that I made about it.
Okay.
Marketing.
There you go. Yeah, I'll have to look at that one.
Yeah, give that a watch, and I think you'll kind of you'll be like, oh, that looks like Skyrim, but actually fun.
I would have to, before I do that, I would have to, my gaming PC needs a lot of work. It's pretty old. It needs a new motherboard. It cannot support a new RAM that I bought for it because it causes it to crash randomly. So I just need a brand new motherboard, just so I can run properly. That whole RAM situation sucked. It just randomly crashing. I was worried about the podcast, about it randomly crashing in the middle of one, and I had to end up just putting the old RAM in it, and that's what it currently has now.
How much is the old RAM? Skyrim's relatively old, and if you're just running with that gameplay mod, it shouldn't cause any issues.
Right now I only have 8 gigabytes of RAM.
Oh, you'll be fine.
Yeah.
Right now you would be a-okay. Skyrim is a piece of ancient history. I'm pretty sure the caveman used to play Skyrim on the cave walls.
There you go.
And yeah, Skyrim, I think even special edition needs a maximum of 4 gigs of RAM. So yeah, you'll be a-okay if you get a chance to try it. But I cannot recommend that enough to you. I think you will really, really have a blast with it. But yeah, that was my number 2 option, was Skyrim.
All right.
Sorry, that went down that wasn't a rabbit hole. That went into the core of the earth and back.
Yeah, you definitely. Yeah, and that's gonna keep happening. That's just how conversations with with us is gonna work. With many of my guests, it just it's amazing how where conversations will just branch off into, off topic wise, and it's just hard to go back.
Hmm. Yeah, I wish I had infinite amount of time in the world, because I would love to just yell at people about why Ordinator is so much fun. And as you titled the video, Ordinator completes Skyrim. Skyrim is almost there in being a perfect game, and I would gladly play Skyrim plus the Ordinator perk mod as a complete game. That is what I think Skyrim was supposed to be.
I told my wife, I'm like, I would love to have a 5 hour podcast one day, and she's like, why would anyone want to listen that long? I'm like, you gotta think, if someone doesn't want to listen to a 5 hour podcast, I'll have content for probably about a year with the clips I can get out of that, and people will probably listen to those.
I just dropped a link there in the so you can view that video later on, just so I
Gotcha.
don't forget, because I'm a very forgetful kind of person.
All right, sounds good. All right, let's get that big number one you got.
And my big number one, everybody listening and probably you as well is going to be like, excuse me, what? Is Maple Story.
Maple
A,
Story.
yes, a game that released in 2005 that is the most casual of casual MMORPGs. I adore the ever loving heck out of that game. I it's weird. Maple Story has been one of the most, like, I guess, consistent games that I just can come back to, pick up after any amount of time, and be like, I like this. Those a lot of games you kind of have to, like, oh, let's get back in the flow. Even me with like Skyrim, sometimes I'm like, let me make sure I remember what I'm doing here. Maple Story, no matter how much it's changed over the years, every single time I come back to it, I'm like, yeah, I know what I'm doing here.
Huh.
Uh, I love it. Have you ever played Maple Story? Even
I
heard of
have
it?
never heard of it.
Okay, so yeah, Maple Story is a relic of the past. It came out in 2005. It's a Korean MMO, which does hold all of the stereotypes that you're thinking of: grindy, and microtransaction ridden, and all of the worst things that you can think of about games. But when you boil it down to its core, Maple Story is like the most undemanding game, and that's one of those things that I love about it. Like, that's, I guess, kind of a theme of most of my list, is it's a lot of single player games or games that you can take at your own pace. And Maple Story is kind of the culmination of all of that, where it is, yeah, well, yeah, there's content, there's progression, and all this. Unlike a lot of MMOs where it's like, come on, get this stuff grinded out, the next expansion's coming up. Maple Story is like, just do whatever. That's the whole game, is just do whatever.
Huh.
Level up, level up. Okay, make some alts, try new classes. You're incentivized to try every class in the game. Like, there's just so much stuff that you can do in whatever time fits. It's such a laid back game. It's kind of a Netflix game as well, where you can, like, watch other stuff while you're playing it. um the skills and abilities, like, uh one of the things that I talked about in my video about it is that Maple Story is kind of the game that reminded me about the word of fantasy, and really, I guess, taught me the word fantasy is exactly what it says. It's fantasy. It does not need to abide by rules. It does not need to abide by some arbitrary restrictions. It takes a lot of the very kind of, not pigeonholed, but a lot of the very simplistic ideas of traditional fantasy and high fantasy classes, and just runs with them. And it doesn't just run with them; it runs off a cliff into La La Land, and I love that about it. So, like, what do you play in a lot of, like, traditional fantasy games, like a warrior, a mage, a thief, a rogue? Like, what do you usually like to play?
I believe it's a warrior.
So yeah, so a warrior. So most games of warrior, it's like, yeah, you got sword and board, or a two-handed weapon, and you've got big, heavy, strong swings, but you're tanky and you're powerful with each swing that you do.
Mm-hmm.
Maple Story says, that's cool. We're gonna have three types of warriors. we're going to have heroes that run around with two-handed weapons. They're going to they attack like 5 times every one time they attack, and they do this like big sweeping slash animation that hits a whole bunch of stuff. And then their one of their like signature abilities is going to like sort of a fourth wall breaking meta level cut the screen in half, where you take your sword and you swing it, and it shows like the screen, it kind of like slices down the middle and then slices in half. It is the coolest animation. It tickles my 10-year-old action figure boy brain, where I'm like, oh, and then he cuts the world in half with a giant sword. Like, that's essentially what it does.
So is
uh,
it? It's just an MMO. It's not a single player game.
it's an MMO, yeah.
Okay.
But it is also very conducive to playing single player. Too conducive, according to some people, and they're not wrong. But it is a MMO that you can and probably still should tackle, as with a group, like find a guild and whatnot. But um, you are perfectly capable of advancing very far just on your own. And yeah, I don't know, it just, there's something about it that is able to really kind of reconnect me with why I just love video games. Is they are the ultimate escapism. You can do crazy, wacky, cool stuff, and I love over the top things. I love things that are super extra, than that just go the extra step.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you're gonna tell me that you're gonna make an edgy character, then make an edgy character. I want it to be like the most tropiest edgelord that ever edged in Edgeville. Like, that is the kind of thing I want to see if you're gonna make something. If you're gonna make a warrior, they're gonna be the warriest warrior that ever warred in Warville. I just love stuff that goes that extra mile, that extra bit, and just says, let's get goofy with it. Let's just, how crazy can we get? And this is what I was talking about earlier when you're talking about Super Mario Odyssey, when I was discussing things that feel like they shouldn't be cohesive, but they are. Maple Story was my number one, and that is the game that I think runs the most with this shouldn't work together, but it does. Where you can go from like a beautiful Greek architecture temple in the sky to this this like landscape that's covered in the ash of oblivion, and then you can go into an upside down subway station. Like, what? It's so trippy, but it also, like, the art style is so tightly done that it all makes sense. You're like, yeah, probably it could work. So yeah.
So
Maple Story.
the gameplay is pretty satisfying.
The gameplay is, see, this is the part where my longtime fan of it wants to go, no, not at all. The gameplay is actually really, really satisfying for a 2D. That's another thing, is 2D sprite based, not really pixel art. For a 2D sprite based game, it has some of the most satisfying gameplay because of that over the topness that I talked about.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the most satisfying things where every class feels really punchy. There is no limit to how powerful anything feels like it was supposed to be. And it just kind of, like I said, it runs with the crazy ideas and translates those into gameplay. Cutting the screen in half as a warrior, like, it will pretty much one-shot any mob that's on the screen that isn't a boss. And when you do it, instead of their usual death animation, it will show them split in half and then fade into nothingness. And you're like, dude, I just cut those things out of reality.
Okay, I'll have to watch your video on it then.
Yeah.
So I can get a better idea of what it's about.
Yeah, I wish I could explain it enough. Oh, in the music of it, they're absolute bangers. Every single track in Maple Story feels like it was manufactured to make me happy, or somebody happy.
And so you played this when it first came out, or a few years later?
Just a few. I've been playing it since 2008, so 14 years I have played MapleStory, which is a little nutty.
Wow. So it sounds like this game really impacted you extremely well. You know, especially if you to put it on your number one, right?
Oh yeah, this game impacted my writing style as a. I'm a dungeon master for D&D. Fun fact of the day.
Okay.
So it impacted my writing style as a DM. It impacted my imagination, my understanding, and my interpretation of fantasy and high fantasy. It really kind of informed how I see other games, and really, I guess, sort of put me in that position of like, I feel like I can appreciate any and all games because of MapleStory. It was so different and so weird that that while this game came out in 2005, so that was the year the Xbox 360 came out, which is always, that's a great way to make yourself feel old. But the console that was able to make graphics as good as Skyrim, that was probably some of the one of the most graphically insane things we saw in that generation, outside of probably The Last of Us 1 on the PS3.
Mm.
The consoles that were able to make like Last of Us and Skyrim level graphics, MapleStory came out the same year in Korea. Or no, it came out the same year in North America. It came out in 2003 in Korea. But it just, it was able to take the simplest things of gameplay. Yeah, it's 2D. It's very, very simplistic. There's the story is absolutely completely out there, and it makes it fun. It makes it enjoyable. It makes me makes me laugh, makes me smile. The boss fights are absolutely nutty. A lot of games, it's like, okay, we're gonna have bosses with kind of slow, kind of telegraphed attacks. Here we're gonna have bosses with telegraphed attacks, but they're going to be like bullet hell shooters to an extent, where some of the in-game bosses, if you can like watch some videos on them, oh my word, they're just, where do you even begin to start trying to avoid these attacks? And so yeah, it feels very much like, for lack of a better description, it tickles the smashing your action figures together kind of thing, where you're just like, oh, but how powerful is this? Oh, but this is so powerful that it does this. Oh, but this is so powerful it does. It just, yeah, it gets to this very sort of, I get almost primal part of just what is fun in its simplest form, that doesn't demand anything of you. It just go have fun. Just do whatever.
So what can you play it on?
PC and PC only.
PC only. Okay.
However, it is, because of how simplistic it is graphically, you should be able to run it on anything and everything. I think they did recently update the graphic requirements, because over the years, yeah, it has definitely gotten a lot flashier, where a lot of things just have more particle effects than you can shake a stick at. But yeah, that is my number one game of all time, which is really, really funny to say, because here I am talking about all these great giants that everybody knew in gaming, and I'm like, oh yeah, then my number one is a game that came out in 2005 that was really just a glorified chat room when it came out, and then had to add the gameplay later. Thumbs up.
I definitely didn't expect that. A game I never heard of. So
Yeah,
that's
no,
definitely awesome. Yeah, I have to take a look at that one, see if I can download it, on the PC sometime, and play a little bit of it, and see what kind of magic you're talking about.
Let's give it a shot. And I'd understand if you were like, "What the hell is this guy on?" Because it is not. It is definitely not for everybody. But it's exactly what I like. It is right there for me.
Well, altogether, is there anything else you wanted to say to wrap up your list?
I guess the last thing I'd want to say to wrap up my list is that when I was talking about this list earlier today with my wife, I kind of realized just how absurdly diverse it is.
Mm-hmm.
And they're all on there for very different reasons. I don't think there's any genre overlap. I guess Dark Souls and Skyrim are like the closest genre overlap, and even then, those two games play so differently.
Yeah.
Not a single game on there plays like remotely differently, and I guess it's just like I feel like I have such a wide, diverse span and taste in gaming that I feel like I can justify it when I say that I feel like I can, at the very least, appreciate any game, even if it's not something I like, even if it's horror, which I am, completely like incapable of playing. I can appreciate where other people enjoy things in games. I try to look for the positives. Like I said right at the beginning, positivity is sorely lacking in the gaming sphere nowadays. And there's a million and one other places that can talk about the negativity. And I think there's there's a lot of valid critiques and valid criticisms about game design and game industry practices. The rise of microtransactions lately has been, really harrowing. But at the same time, there's a lot of room still to remind ourselves, why did we fall in love with this medium of art in the first place?
Yes.
And I think that, through this list of games, like I don't know if I would put these even on a games everyone should play before they die list. I'd put maybe like 3 of them on there, like Dark Souls, Skyrim, and probably Dishonored, or possibly Mario. I don't know. I honestly, even MapleStory, my favorite game of all time, I would say I don't think everybody needs to play MapleStory. I just know that game holds a special place in my heart.
So MapleStory is more like kind of a personal thing.
Yeah, games that it was like that would be like, yeah, these are the games in mainstream widespread discussion. Yes, absolutely, for all the reasons that other people like. But MapleStory for me comes back to the personal and like kind of the sentimental attachment of like, this game grounds me. And as I discussed in my video, I say it's a game that reminds me who I was, and that there's what it reminds me of is, have you ever played Undertale? Or at least I'm sure you've heard a lot about Undertale.
I've heard of it. I never played it.
There's this one part where there's this thing that people say like it's made them break down into tears when they see it, and it's a mirror that when you look into it, it just says, despite everything, it's still you. And it's such a powerful little quote, where like being able to look into a mirror, and after like it's gets a bit meta, because it's like, yeah, in the game, whatever you've done, oh, you're still the character you started as. But also from a meta perspective, looking in a mirror in real life, despite everything that we've been through in our lives, you're still you. And MapleStory for me is kind of that mirror, where when I look into that, I go, oh yeah, I'm still me. And
wow.
it grounds me. It brings me back to remembering, because it was really the first game that I found, like discovered, downloaded, and played by myself, on my own, instead of being like, oh, I'll play whatever my brother's playing or something like that. It was the first game that I really was like, this is my game. This is my comfort game, and I will come back to this till the day I die.
That's extremely insightful. I mean, no matter how bad the quality of games get in the future, you can always look back at those 10 games that you feel like represents your personality and your preferences and how you just want to experience fantasy overall.
Yeah, I think that video games is a form of escapism. A lot of people always talk about escapism as a negative thing. We've all heard that, oh, gamers just don't want to deal with the real world. That's why they want to get into all these escapist fantasies, and they just want to be violent. And it's quite literally the that one meme of guys only want one thing, and it's effing disgusting. And then it's like, or it's not that one. It's the I think it was like a React video where it said, see, this is why I hate video games. It appeals to the male fantasy.
Oh,
and it just
man.
and people have edited so many things. Like they've edited the Skyrim, you awaken feeling well rested. Yes, that is a fantasy. Or it appeals to the male fantasy, and it just shows somebody giving somebody a hug. And you're like, yeah, I kind of want that. So that's one of those things of, games do appeal to an escapist, fantasy. And I don't think it's a strictly male fantasy. There's a lot of, great experiences, that women can glean from games. And my voice. Sorry, I'm gonna have to grab another water after this. I already drank through mine. um, and I think that, games, the escapism isn't a bad thing. It's not saying I don't want to ever deal with my problems in real life. And sure, there's arguments to be made that with addiction and whatnot, yeah, maybe that could be, the circumstance. But what a lot of games serve to do is right now, there's a lot going on, and don't I can't handle it all right now. I can't handle the mental load. My mind is consumed with everything and being pulled in a million directions at once. Let's play a game. Let's focus on a simple rule set that I can understand. Let's focus on a world that I can both understand and makes no sense, and get lost for a couple minutes. And then we can all come back. And then our world makes a bit more sense because we just traveled off to Skyrim, where I can yell at a man and he flies off a cliff. That's funny. That got really sentimental and then funny again.
There you go. Yeah, once again, well spoken and very beautiful. And one thing we definitely need to remember, video games are a hobby, and it is an escape. But we just like everything else, it doesn't need to be abused. It doesn't need to become an addiction, or at least an unhealthy addiction. Where you just kind of just stay home and not work and not make a living. You still, you can still make a video games part of your life, but you need to be able to, go out there and impact the community, and make it, get yourself out there in the real world. Because if you just get lost in the world of video games, you'll end up just getting completely consumed by it, and you just end up looking at yourself when you're 60 years old and just wondering what else you could have done, what skills that you didn't discover. And sometimes I wonder if I just concentrate too much on video games. I mean, I have a very stable career because I was able to balance out my love for video games and what I wanted to do in the real world. And I feel like sometimes video games kind of take over because I could be a better employee by, simply getting more licenses. I slack a lot on taking tests, studying. I do fairly well with the lack of what I put into it, but I really need to back off sometimes just to put into studies, just so I can, get raises, and instead of just staying in the same spot, which I feel like I've done for the past maybe 8 years, where I've gotten maybe a few licenses and I just kind of back off, and I do need to focus more on improving myself so I can keep continuing increasing financial gain. And however, it's still working very well, and I'm maintaining that balance. But like I said, sometimes video games do get in the way because there's so many video games that I want to experience. However, I just don't need to let it overcome me eventually.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. I thought the same thing. I think I feel a little differently while also understanding where you're coming from, because games can be a painfully, life consuming sort of thing, where if you're doing nothing with them, then you can just I think you mentioned this either on a previous conversation or whatnot. But you can just kind of passively engage with video games and I play video games. Or do you experience, do you discuss, do you consume them, and do you consume them like art, or do you consume them like goods, for lack of a better term? Do you consume them as a product, or you consume it as a piece of art?
Right.
Where, going to a going to a museum or whatever, experience a piece of art, and consuming it as a piece of art means engaging with it on a different level. And granted, I know that that doesn't make you money or get you better at your job or anything, and once again, do good at life before doing good at games. But I think that there are ways to go places. I mean, gaming is a multi-billion-dollar industry,
Mm-hmm.
and outside of just making, developing, um, that's I guess kind of to come all the way back because boom, Dark Souls cycles. Look at us go. We are so meta. Is going back to your very first question was what are my aspirations with the channel? Is I think someday I would love to just be able to do nothing but just vomit my thoughts about video games. Anyone who's willing to listen and make a living off of that somehow, some way.
Oh
And
yes.
like, and I say vomit, but like good vomit, not bad vomit. Uh, don't think about that one too much.
Mm-hmm.
I would love to just be able to talk, write, review, uh, do all sorts of things that are financially viable while still letting me engage with this medium of art in this way. And I know that it's not going to happen for everybody. I do still have a career outside of this. And yeah, that is basically all I have to say on that subject. And by say basically, I mean that is 10% of what I have to say on that subject.
That's definitely, a great goal if that's something you want. I feel like I would get burnt out personally. Just I mean, of course, I love talking about games on the side, but just doing it, for financial gain, I feel like it would become a chore, which is something I definitely would not want. I don't want gaming to become a chore, and so I like a good balance, like I mentioned before, of working, in a career with other people, interacting with other people, and having challenges outside, and then coming home and focusing on the hobby that I really love talking about and experiencing. And like I said, I just feel like if I focus 100% on that and for financial gain, I just don't think I would enjoy it as much.
Yeah, I think that is also, a trap that can definitely be fallen into. And I think that's also kind of why I wanted to, you know, try and keep my head above water as much as I can. And, that's going to be my focus that I've told my wife, if I ever seem like I'm straying from this, drag me back to it. The focus of I'm doing this for me and talking about games for me to remind myself. Um, because it's cool. I think that YouTube's a crazy cool invention where if back in the day you were to say, I want to be a YouTuber when I grow up, you would have been laughed at. Nowadays, oh no, look at those YouTubers making millions.
Mm-hmm.
But even just like, no matter what, like just even being able to just live comfortably by talking about something I genuinely have a huge passion for, I think that would just be the coolest thing ever.
Oh
And if
yes.
not, it'll still be my thing I do on the side. And I think that's another thing is I feel like I have infinite content because my brain comes up with like stuff to say about games by the minute. And
Mm-hmm.
so I'm like, oh no, when am I going to get this all written down? Like all of these why I still plays I'm doing, this is like phase one. I can guarantee I'm going to come back and be like, while I'm still playing, why I'm definitely still playing. Like I could continually talk about every game. Like that 20-minute video I made about Dark Souls is probably about 10% of what I would love to say about Dark Souls.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I just don't want to make hour-long videos
Yeah.
because I already felt like I was getting very tangential with the script on that one. So, and I did end up cutting like 2 minutes worth of stuff out of it as well, or else it would have been like 22 minutes. So, yeah, uh, I just, it's a great topic to talk about, and there's, I think, a lot more room because video games have really only recently come into their own as a somewhat accepted medium of art. Not even fully yet, I don't think. I think there's still some ways to go before video games are accepted as a form of art, fully and thoroughly. But I do think we are on the right track, and I think that a lot more discussions have to be had about the merits of games as artistic works, and that a lot more games need to do kind of what Dark Souls did and be willing to position themselves as works of art instead of as toys or whatever.
Okay.
So yeah.
Wow. Sorry, I think my wife's about to come in. She's talking on the phone. I hope she. I don't know what she's gonna do.
Oh no.
I just don't want you to start saying something and then you can hear her talking, and I might have to cut this part out. Don't forget your keys. That's a good idea. You can just let us keep going until, at least, let's see where we're at. We're about an hour and 45 minutes. You can let us go for another 15 minutes.
Alright, Daddy, well, I love you.
You good?
Did you knock out okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. I think I totally forgot what I was gonna say after all of that.
I had just mentioned that about games, how the conversation around games would need to change for them to become more widely accepted as a form of art, and be more brave and willing to make a statement, or to position themselves as artistic works instead of as products or toys, as you could kind of describe a lot of games nowadays.
I don't know if you've seen these protesters, but I think it'd be really funny if they went as far as to go inside a GameStop and pour tomato soup on top of all the video games and then glue their hands to the floor.
Dude, smash a copy of Dark Souls. That'll send a message, probably.
Yeah, glue their hand to the Elden Ring copies, Dark Souls, Sekiro, Bloodborne. Is there any way I could convince you to play Sekiro?
Oh, I have it. I own the game. I just haven't played it yet. My backlog is let me see here. In Steam, I own 384 games on Steam. Physical games that I have, I probably beat maybe like 50 of the Steam, so about 330 on Steam. Then physical games that I have sitting on like 4 shelves behind me. I'm something of a collector, by the way. That's probably worth noting. And we're gonna definitely make something about how collecting video games has influenced how I view video games. I probably have another 300 to 400 games on those shelves. So my backlog's only like 700 games. So I'm doing okay. You could say I'm basically caught up.
So, oh man, my backlog. I don't even remember what games I have. I know I got Guacamelee. I finished the first Guacamelee. I started Guacamelee 2. Still haven't finished it. Amazing game, by the way, Guacamelee.
So you're in that. So you're in that same boat as I am, where you go to the GameStop, you're like, oh, this looks like fun. Wait, do I own this?
Yep. Yeah, but I'll have it. And I'm like, I still don't feel like playing it.
Exactly. There's a lot of games that I really do feel. There's a lot of games that I really do feel like I just never really got to. I just haven't experienced yet, and like that's another one of my my dirty confessions as a gamer is I have so many there are so many classics and so many formative games that I have yet to experience. I have never played through to the end of a Zelda game ever. Not Ocarina, not Majora's, not even Breath of the Wild. I have played tidbits of a lot of Zelda games, never finished one. I have never beaten any Sonic games. one of the most well known, not necessarily greatest, but mascots in gaming. Recently, I've had this epiphany, and I feel like it's something I want to talk about someday. Is I feel like I'm supposed to like Sonic because of, like I described earlier, a lot of my things I enjoy in games. I like over the top. I love, I love things that are like almost like corny and like pretty, cringe. I love cringe. I think cringe is hilarious, and I think there are some things that's like just enjoy it, just have fun with it. I love things that don't take themselves seriously. That is my favorite thing, in especially as far as games are concerned. So there's a part of me that's like, I feel like I'm supposed to be a Sonic fan, but I've never played any of the games, so I have no idea.
Yeah, I'm with you too. I haven't finished any Zelda games, any Sonic games. I played them, but it never really pulled me in enough to finish them.
Yeah, and for me, it's not even necessarily like, oh, it never pulled me in enough to finish them. It's just kind of a time thing where I'm like, oh yeah, I should totally play this someday eventually.
Yeah.
Or you can go start your 19th playthrough of Skyrim. Let's go!
It's amazing how some games just kind of, you play them and you just kind of, okay, well, I'm going to take a break, then never come back. And then you got other games where you'll play them and you're like, okay, I cannot stop playing this game until I'm done with it, until I've gotten 100%. It's amazing at just how random games will just do that to you. And
It's all or nothing. It is absolutely all or nothing with a lot of games where you're like, yeah, I'm on my 19th playthrough of this. Oh, have you ever played this other game that's just as good and very well critically acclaimed? I have it in my library. I'll get to it eventually.
yeah, it's like,
Probably.
yeah, I had Breath of the Wild on the Switch, and I can't even tell you what point I am in the game. And I like to get the strategy guide and just kind of follow the strategy guide. I think I might have a lot more fun with it if I just have the guide.
Yeah, I'm looking through my library now. So let's see. I never got to be any other Elder Scrolls except for Skyrim. I played a little bit of Oblivion and a little bit of Morrowind, but never really got through anything on them. Um, I have I have never played through any of the Borderlands games. That's fun. Um, I never beat BioShock 1 or 2. I did beat Infinite.
Hmm.
And even then, like, all of talking about this, like, it's like, oh gosh, we haven't played through all these games. It's not nearly as bad as it sounds, because a lot of like stats on things like Steam and and like PlayStation trophies show that people, I think that's, like, there's an average of like 22%. I do not quote me on that. 86% of statistics are made up on the spot. I'll let you decide if that was made up on the spot. But I'm pretty sure it was like a 22% or something people finish the games that they buy.
Mhm.
It's not a lot.
Yeah. Man. Oh. So I guess we better go through my top 5 before it gets.
Oh yeah, we've got a lot more top fives to talk about. Let's go.
Yeah. So I'll go through my explanation about them briefly. My list kind of it basically works the same as yours. One, just because I have one name doesn't mean I hate the other ones. It's kind of combined in that. It's just the ones I mentioned are my favorite in that series. Yeah. All right. So my number 5 is Castlevania Symphony of the Night. And by the way, these constantly kind of switch back and forth. It's not like it's cemented on the number.
Oh.
It's just what I thought about a moment ago. So if there's a game missing, it's going to be in the other half. But these are the ones I thought about first. So yeah, number 5 is Castlevania Symphony of the Night, and this is one of my favorite. This is pretty much the best I've seen the Metrovania concept handled. It's just a constant, just interesting adventure going through and finding the tools that you need to get through the rest of the game, and not to mention one of the most epic extensions of the game I've ever seen. Elden Ring actually does it in a small segment. I won't spoil what it is. Have you played Symphony of the Night?
I have not. I have never played through a single one of the Castlevania games because I am a horrible person.
But I highly recommend it. If you're going to play any Castlevania game, play this one. It does something that I've never seen any other video game do, except for Elden Ring in that one little small segment. If you ever play it, I'll let you know what it is. There's something that the game does that just extends its replay value massively, and not in the way you expect. Because the game alone is massive, and you can get plenty of value in it just from that one portion. There's something that happens. Like I said, it extends it. And it's just one of the most incredible things I've ever seen in gaming. And I wish that we could see something like it again. I wish I could say what it is because it's absolutely incredible. People that play the game know exactly what I'm talking about. Some people would play Cynthia of the Night, finish it, and never know about the massive extension, and it's only unless you just look it up. I can't imagine people, that played Cynthia Night thought they finished it, and then later on discovering, the internet, figuring out that there's just a whole nother section of the game.
Wait, what? Now I gotta know. You don't just say that. That's just like saying, "Hey, yeah, man, sleep good tonight, especially when the thing arrives."
I mean, do you want me to go ahead and tell you?
Good luck. Bye. Have a great time. Kinda. Yeah. Now I'm curious.
Okay. Are you absolutely sure? Because I mean, it's very cryptic. I will admit, it's way too cryptic to get to it. It's definitely something that should have existed today because the way you get to it is just a little bit too much, and they don't really guide you to it. But it's such a big part of the game, and they're just a cryptic way of hiding it. But if you're absolutely sure, I'll go ahead and tell you.
My guy, I am 8 months late on my spoiler embargo for Elden Ring, and I think I'm 15 years late on my spoiler embargo for Symphony of the Night. Yeah,
Okay. So, all right. Obviously, Castlevania, you have a castle, you got a map and everything. So, you beat the game. You think you beat the game. The game has a cutscene, credits, and everything. So, and that's all you think there is. So, in the game, you have a couple of, I believe there are 2 rings you must collect, and you have this one section where there's like a clock. It's a really weird looking room, and once the clock keys are the arms of the clock, or I think that's what they're called. Whenever they're lined up, it opens up certain sections in that area that you can access. And I don't know if it's scripted or not, but anyway, when you get to this clock area with these rings, and maybe I could be telling it incorrectly, but it's from my memory. Is that cryptic that it's just not that memorable? Unfortunately, I wish there was a more memorable way to explain it. But anyway, when you have the right items, this clock turns the castle upside down, and you got to do everything all over again. Different enemies, different bosses, whole new game, a whole new section of the game that you have to explore. And you put so many hours in the first version of the castle. The castle turns upside down. Do everything again, but a totally different experience because there are different enemies and different bosses.
Huh.
And Elden Ring does it in a very small way, which is really cool.
Huh. Yeah, the old classic, I think it was in Zero Punctuation Review. He said, I'm sorry if my terminology is out of date, Red Dead, but I always thought that a epilogue didn't mean an entire second game. The Red Dead Redemption 2 epilogue was like 8 hours long or something. So, yeah.
But yeah, man, I feel like I can't even give it justice just by explaining it that way. It's just some of the best bosses are in the Upside Down Castle.
I will definitely, if I ever do play it through Symphony of the Night, I will go out of my way to see if I can get that unlocked so I can mess around with it, because that sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah, and it's pretty much, I think you can play on just about every system. I'm not sure about the Switch. I know you can play it on PC, PlayStation, definitely PlayStation, because it was originally a PlayStation exclusive. and Xbox. So you can, I know you can access it.
Mm. Yeah,
do-
no, there's so many more ways to play games nowadays.
oh yes. Did you have any more questions about it?
No, I now that you've mentioned that, I am curious. I could probably intuit the Elden Ring one when if I if I ever run into it, I'll probably this is what he was talking about. Now that I kind of have a vague idea.
Hmm. Now, to access it, it is part of a mission, a very popular mission, by the way. So it's not like you're going to just stumble across it unless you just follow that one specific mission.
Mm.
So my number 4 is Overcooked 2.
Oh, yeah.
This game has absolutely incredible level design. It was unexpectedly amazing. It started with the first game. The first game was available on PlayStation Plus. I played it with a friend. We were just going to originally play it as a joke. I ended up falling in love with it. He found it too stressful, so I just finished it by myself. And then, of course, I bought Overcooked 2. Absolutely mind-blowing. The level design, just the way the game just flows, and you got to figure out how to get these. Have you played it before?
Yes, I played it with my wife. That is a really, really, really great divorce speedrun simulator. I'm kidding. But
Yeah, I've played it with my wife, and she keeps throwing the fire extinguisher away.
Hey!
She's
Dude,
right behind
it
me,
belongs
by
to
the
the
way.
trash. It belongs to the trash. No, she's got the right of it.
There will be a humongous fire going on, and we need to put it out. She's like, "Oh, guess what? This goes in the trash."
Yes.
Bless her heart.
So-
So yeah, Overcooked 2 was just an outstanding experience. I played every single level in the DLC. I platinumed it. The DLC, my goodness, was this whole monster kind of theme, and you had to feed them this giant piece of toast, I think, and within a certain time limit. It was just the way they approached boss fights is just also incredible, and so many ideas. I cannot wait for a third game, and I hope they make an Overcooked level maker, because boy, do I have some
that
ideas.
would be so much fun.
Oh man.
Oh, that would be a blast.
But yeah, Overcooked 2 was definitely another very impactful gaming experience for me. Um, did you have anything to add on to that?
No, I just remember Overcooked was very fun, very very fun and very funny.
Did you play the second one?
Not the second, just the first
Oh
one.
man, you gotta play the second one. Because they add a throwing mechanic.
Oh, so you can throw things across the kitchen. Oh
Yeah,
man.
yeah.
Oh no.
And you can jump now in the second one.
I cannot be trusted with this power.
Yeah, play the second one and the DLC if you ever find the time. And also, while I'm on the subject, Moving Out is also a really good game. It's not in my top 5 or top 10, but it's also extremely well made for the concept. It's similar to Overcooked, but you're moving furniture out to a truck. They add very interesting challenges, like the DLC added the challenge of moving stuff into the houses, and so it's definitely a gaming series that has a lot of potential. The sequel is coming out next year. I cannot wait to play it. It's one of my favorite platinums, and I hope they improve on a lot of the flaws the first one had. Definitely one of those really quirky games that's just extremely unique and doesn't get enough attention. So my
Remember when games were creative? Man, crazy.
yeah, I know. Remember? All right. So my number 3 is Shadow of the Colossus.
Ooh, there's a good choice.
Man, I can't tell you how many times I played this game. Just what can I say? The game is just absolutely just art. It's just pure art with engaging gameplay, climbing on top of Colossus, and just solving the puzzle of figuring out where his weak points are, and just seeing him fall with the dramatic music like you're the villain. And the score is one of my favorite scores in video games. Just it's so incredibly epic.
It really is a game that makes you think, am I the baddie?
And also, it has one of my favorite hardest difficulties, along with The Last of Us, because they actually add more weak points to the Colossus. And so it's not like it's the same bland experience where you gotta strike the weak points for longer. They actually add more weak points that you got to adjust your strategy to get to those other areas of the Colossus. It's like, man, it seems so simple, Well, and I'm like, why can't other video games just do this instead of just bloating up enemy health? Just add more, add
Just
stuff like that, that complements the gameplay that you have created for the game.
yeah, just make the game more interesting. Thank you. That's all it is. That's all it takes. Make your hard mode by making the game more interesting.
Yes.
Make the enemies smarter. There are some moments from like hard modes of games that make the games like stick out in your mind because they're like, I didn't know the enemies would do that. What?
Mm-hmm.
Like a lot of people have said, Halo hard modes are really good because enemies won't just, they like I think they take a few more rounds, but not a crazy amount more. But the real challenge is they'll start to do things. They'll flush you out with grenades. They'll coordinate their like flanking maneuvers, trying to get you out of cover. You stuff like that. It's like, oh wow, that's harder. Yeah, instead of just the enemies hit more and take more, it's now like, yo, these guys are trying to kill you better.
Mm-hmm. And anything that makes you think outside the box, and something that's just not a drag. I call it endurance difficulty. If you have to attack an enemy, the same way, just a little bit longer. I just consider that endurance difficulty, and it's just not for me personally. I know there are people out there that like that, but I just don't. Going back to my attention span, I just can't do the same thing for long periods of time. It's got to stay fresh.
The fine line between difficulty and tedium.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, I think hard difficulty, the hardest difficulties is definitely a subject we could definitely talk about and save for another time because I feel like I could talk about that. That's just one of those extremely long conversations. So my second entry is Twist Metal Black.
Oh yeah.
Have you played any of the Twist Metal games?
I've only ever seen footage of them. They look wild and crazy and hilarious and awesome.
Yeah, they need to come back. I love the 2012 or 2013 release. I love the gameplay in that one. However, the stories were very lacking, and they were focused a little bit too much on the online. But anyway, Twisted Metal Black is one of the most disturbing stories I've ever seen in video games. It affected me so much when I was a kid. I mean, I played it when I wasn't really supposed to, but man, that game scared me to death. Just the stories were just horrifying, and even on my YouTube channel, I have the cutscene music that you cannot just simply find somewhere. They don't tell you where these albums come from because it's stock music, and I had to find it through YouTube music tags. That was, just simply detections. So I just did some research and I found those files of the tracks that were used in the cutscenes, and I uploaded them to my YouTube channel. Those are actually the most gradually consistent in views every day I get on my channel because people are actually looking for those songs. And so, Just Metal Black, it's one of those games where the difficulty adjustments don't really make a huge difference, unfortunately. I guess hard mode is slightly more difficult, but really at that point you're dealing with a lot of RNG, so you gotta have to camp out for it to really work. And that's what I had to do, at least on the hardest difficulty. You just find a really good spot that has regenerating weapons, and you just kind of just sit there. That way you're not randomly getting hit and just killed constantly. So unfortunately, the hardest difficulty is more like a camp motivator. But yeah, horrific stories, some of the best stories I've seen in video games, and also just excellent gameplay, awesome level design. I enjoy it every time I play it. I really wish I could play it more. It needs an upgrade. It's something that I'm really expecting them to announce one day, that it's getting an upgrade, because it definitely deserves one. I'm definitely curious to see how they would handle it. I hope they don't ruin the cutscenes, because cutscenes are very eerie. They have like moments of movement and moments of just stillness with zoom ins, and the world is just absolutely horrific. And if they upgrade it, they need to match it. They need to handle that part perfectly, and maybe even refine the gameplay to the 2013 standard, and you would have an outstanding Twisted Metal game. Did you have anything you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, no, I've never really had any experience with the Twisted Metal games. I've only ever, like I said, just watched some videos. I'm like, That's certainly a concept.
Mm. Yeah, it's
But
definitely unpredictable. You know, you can just jump in, and you got so many, opponent. Now, one thing that's kind of a problem, but not really, because I'm not sure how it would work. But you're out in the field, and it's a contest, but it feels like everybody's trying to kill you instead of everybody trying to fight each other individually.
Mhm.
But I feel like it could work if they did less damage to each other and more damage to you. I think that would be a good balance, but at least it would feel like a contest.
Sometimes that's the thing with AI is it feels like they prioritize the player.
Hmm.
You're like, okay, is this a free for all or team deathmatch, and I'm the only one on my team?
Yeah, and so there are some issues definitely, and I feel like what I just mentioned wouldn't be such a big deal. I mean, it'd be amazing if you're fighting like 10 opponents, you're focusing on one guy, and then if while you're driving, if you happen to notice, you could see AI fighting each other, and I think that would be a very fascinating fix. Um,
Hmm.
so let's go ahead and get to my number one, and it is it came out this year. It is Elden Ring.
Let's go.
I was so afraid this was going to happen. I saw footage, and I'm not the biggest open world fan. However, Elden Ring just brought it to a whole nother level, and I could not stop playing it. I'm surprised I found a moment in this year to play Frogun, um, and I eventually just went back to Elden Ring, and I just couldn't stop playing it. I applied my heavy restrictions on the gameplay because of course, I'm just not a big fan of summons and just being overpowered. I just like, getting more personal with the boss fights, and I feel like Elden Ring just really encapsulates what I love the most about the From Software games: the incredible level design, just the unique atmosphere, outstanding gameplay. I was stubborn at first and I didn't do jump attacks, but once I started using jump attacks, I fell in love with it immediately, and man, what can I say?
You know that it's a really good game and a really good boss fight when after it you feel obligated to do the bow emote after you've defeated them.
Oh
Good fight.
yes, and I like adding gestures into my quick, when you hold triangle and it just does an emote depending on your controller movement, and
Mhm.
I set all the gestures, and it's random. You never know which one you're going to get, and I love doing that after each boss fight. This is the first time I've played um, and fought bosses without the heads up display. It adds a whole
Ooh.
nother level of satisfaction just not knowing when the boss is going to die. Plus, it looks good in a review that I was making throughout. Um, Now, a lot of people would argue saying, "Oh, I need to know if you took damage or not," and I have a bad habit of not clicking on my status and showing that I didn't take damage. I've done that for a few. I definitely did that for the Godskin duo. I'm like, okay, here, I didn't take any hits.
Did the boss? Here's the one. If the boss stuck his sword in me, I probably took damage.
Yeah, I actually had some people say, "Oh, you took damage right there." I'm like, "No, I didn't," and he was like, "Yeah, yeah, I played. I'm an expert, and I know when he took damage." I'm like, I show my
Everyone's an
stats at the
expert.
end. Yeah, everyone's got to be an expert. But yeah, what can I say? I mean, Elden Ring just blew me away. The original number one was Dark Souls. Now, of course, that's contained within. Um,
Elden Ring. It says Elden Ring is now at the front of the pack.
yeah, I can't think. I don't even know if Elden Ring will ever be topped. I can't think of any game that could possibly top it. Um, Man, I can't think of what kind of game could offer the creative freedom that Elden Ring has. Maybe Elden Ring 2 possibly.
Dude, Elden Ring 2, Electric Boogaloo.
Yeah,
Obviously.
but I'm trying my best to keep it brief, but there's just so much. I mean, there's a reason why I haven't reviewed the From Software games, because it feels like I can't even respectfully
I
describe.
can't do it unbiased. They're
Yeah.
good. I like.
Yeah, I know. I'm like,
Then just
yeah, I
do what I
love
do.
Elden Ring,
Just
and that's because I
just do
feel.
what I do. Make a totally biased, 100% positive. I think that's totally okay. I think there is a space
Mhm.
for people to just talk about the positive. You can find the negatives everywhere.
Mhm.
But what is somebody who is deeply, passionately in love and is trying to look for a legal way to marry this game? What does that look like?
Yes, and what you said is true. I mean, really, pretty much the only way I can explain how I love these games without trying to just slip in a little review is just to basically just pick a topic in the game that I love and just write a script, make a video, and just do it that way. And I feel like that would respect the game's legacy much more than just one simple review of it.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that some people are like, oh, I don't know if we'll be able to do this justice or give it a fair review. It's like, then don't give it a just simp hard. It's it's okay to simp for some games.
Mm-hmm.
Like I don't care. That's what I'm basically doing in my scripts. I'm simping straight up for games. They can do no wrong, and that's all right.
This is the first time I've ever seen people review a game without finishing it. Well, when I say that, it's just the mass amount of people that reviewed the game without finishing it. The Elden Ring was just so massive. People just couldn't wait to release a review of it. I really wish they wouldn't have called it a review. It really should have been first impressions.
First impressions, yeah. I think retrospectives are worth infinitely more than reviews are.
Yes.
That's a whole topic for another day, but I genuinely think that retrospectives, like you've seen there's so many channels that do retrospective videos, but I think those are worth a lot more than reviews because you have the context of whatever's come out between that game and now, as well as you've had years of time to process the game and say, this is what this was about, instead of just it was kind of hard. There was a dude with a stick that kept smacking me named Margit, and that was it. And that doesn't tell you everything you need to know.
Yeah. I feel like if you're going to upload boss fights on YouTube, you really should be displaying everything about the boss. I think being overpowered doesn't really, show much, in my opinion. If you're going to showcase a boss, I think you really should have everything the boss offers. And that's just my opinion. I understand a lot of people still feel proud about killing a boss. It's just, killing a boss in 2 or 3 hits is just not really interesting, in my opinion.
Bro, Dark Souls does have an easy mode. It's called sorcery.
Yeah, there you go. But without going into a deep conversation about just about that in general, we have broken my podcast record. We're at 2 hours and 15 minutes.
See, didn't feel like any time at all.
No, this felt like 30 minutes.
Oh man!
But I guess we should go ahead and wrap it up. I mean, heck, it's a good thing I didn't add like 4 more questions for you because we barely made the top 5.
Exactly. I could talk about literally every game. Like, I am terrified of the day that I make like a top 25 or a top 50, because that's going to be like a 7-hour video.
Oh yes. And maybe it'll be me and you that make that 5-hour podcast one day if you decide to return.
Honestly, I would be beyond down. You'd have to get me at like early in the day and then go all the way until like into the night. But I would gladly talk about a lot of things for 5+ hours. I am a very talkative person. I don't know how many of my videos you've heard, but I can be very ranty. And I can just kind of go off on tangents left and right. I mean, we've done that a lot today, but this is not unnatural for me. This is not just me, oh, I gotta talk. No, this is what I do. This is my flow of speech.
I mean, look at us. We're almost halfway to 3 hours, and I feel like I still feel fresh. I feel like we could keep going, but unfortunately, got to close it up here. My wife's hungry, and I'm hungry.
Yeah, I've got some friends that want to play League of Legends. I don't want to play a good game today. Sometimes, like, video games are like food. Sometimes we just got to go and eat some fast food.
Oh yes. So in closing, I really appreciate you coming on. I that video about Dark Souls you made was absolutely beautiful. Definitely check it out. I'll even put a link in it, in the full podcast upload. I don't know when this will be out. Maybe I'm aiming for Tuesday. Thursdays, and the weekend are my available slots, because Monday, Wednesday, and Friday are my podcast clip days.
Fun. Yeah, I will look for it. And sorry, I paused so you could have a point to cut. Is this okay if I want to clip a few parts of this discussion and make a little mini video, or How is I want just to make sure that's okay, or if it's not, that's totally okay.
If that's okay, we'll talk about that in post.
Okay,
We'll
making
go
sure.
ahead and wrap it up here, and I'm hoping that AMD doesn't glitch out on me. I would hate that. Would be devastating if I lost 2 hours and 20 minutes of conversation.
I'll have it again.
Yeah, we'll just do it all over again. So, all right, man. If you want to close yourself out, and we'll go ahead and end this podcast, and we'll just talk afterwards.
All right. Well, thank you everyone who did listen to the Solo for Life. Do I have that correct? Podcast.
Yes.
To the Solo for Life podcast. I have had a blast here speaking here with your host. And once again, if you want to come and find my channel, I'm a relatively new YouTuber. Been doing this for 3 months. You can find me at PunkDisorder, PunkDisorder, on YouTube, Rumble, Odyssey, pretty much anywhere that you can have videos uploaded. And yeah, I really do hope to come back to the Solo for Life podcast. And it sounds like we pulled out about 5 or 6 different conversation threads that we could have definitely ran with.
Oh yeah, we had to hold our. We definitely pulled our punches with this one.
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely appreciate you coming on, and hopefully we'll have many more of these. And of course, I'm the Gay Charlie, and I'm going to close it out.